Super excited to be here with you, Stephanie. Have this conversation about the last few years of working together and your experience in the space of experience management, running a lot of CX programs. So, for the people, would love to just have you introduce yourself. Tell us about yourself.
Yeah, well, I'm Stephanie Davila, the CX operations director at One Inc. And I've been with One Inc. for 3 years coming this February. And it's been great. I was brought on to be essentially just a customer experience manager in charge of our Voice of the Customer program. And since then, my role has grown significantly. I run our operations team and multiple programs, but definitely my bread and butter and my brainchild at One Inc. is our Voice of the Customer program. And so I'm super happy to be here.
Yeah, great to have you here. Um, why Qualtrics? I know you've used other platforms in the past, and why have you chosen Qualtrics at One Inc. to be the platform to gather your experiential data?
My main reason for using Qualtrics is it's an industry leader. It's a great platform. It's very feature rich. And I felt like for being the only person in charge of our Voice of the Customer program, it just made the most sense. I knew I was going to have a lot more resources. I did use a different platform in a previous life, but even then, I wanted to use Qualtrics. And so, really, it was just an opportunity for me to get a more robust system, something that was feature rich, something that had a big team behind it. And what kind of left me was I just needed to run a lean program. And so I knew that they just had the resources to help support me that way. I didn't have a whole team behind me. Um, and that's really what led me to Qualtrics.
Amazing. Yeah. Looking back, we've partnered since March of 2022. I didn't quite realize it had been that long, but we started working together in March of 2022. So, tell me a little bit about, what challenges led wanting to seek out a vendor like Red Pepper Software to support the team.
Well, for me personally, in all of my lives doing what I do, I've always leveraged a vendor to help me just achieve my goals. Um, for me, it's always the best option. I tend to run really lean programs. It's usually just me implementing a system, trying to stand up a program, and it's a huge endeavor to do just on your own, especially at the speed that we wanted to do it at One Inc. So I'm a big fan of leveraging a vendor. I feel it's always the best way to go. And what was really nice is Qualtrics actually recommended Red Pepper to be my partner to implement my program. And then I had such a great experience doing that that it made sense to keep a retainer agreement with you guys. So I can accomplish all of my goals surrounding our Voice of the Customer program. So I'm not dependent on resources internally to help me, trying to save up, budget and resources with our internal teams who are working on our product. It really became something that I could manage with you directly. And it's been a great experience so far. And I love being on phone calls with you guys and saying, hey, Preston, what are your other clients working on? Or do you have a team at Red Pepper that can help me do this? And the answer is always yes, it's never no. And so it just really enables me to keep this program up and running and support it with minimal staff. So it's been great. It's been perfect.
Awesome. Expound maybe a little bit on some of the goals. Like what goals did you have, and maybe how did we match those goals, or did we hit those goals that you had when you first reached out to Red Pepper and we started our partnership?
Yeah, the biggest goal was I needed to stand up a program and I needed to do it fast. So I mentioned I started in February of 2022 and we started working together in March of 2022.
Yeah.
So that's how fast I needed to get something up and running. And I didn't use Qualtrics previously. I mentioned I was using a different platform at the time. So I didn't have the experience within Qualtrics to just start creating surveys, start sending them out. I knew I needed that help. And that was probably the biggest driver to get me to sign up with Red Pepper was, talking to Qualtrics and my account executive at the time and just really telling him, hey, I want to use Qualtrics, but I need support. So is that support at Qualtrics? I understand I'm a tiny account getting 5 licenses, but what kind of support can I get to get my program stood up quickly? Because at the time, our executive team was actually pushing to push out a survey, and I was just like, I've never used Qualtrics before, so I don't know how I'm going to accomplish that all of a sudden on my own. And it really just, the partnership created a runway, right? Like I was able to stand something up quickly, and then I was able to map out which surveys I was going to get at. And I think I actually opened up that first year with upwards of 6 to 7 surveys across our journey. And that was the biggest hurdle, and then that was the goal, and I was able to accomplish all of it with Red Pepper, so it made the most sense.
Now is the partnership and you know overall impacted the organization, like operations wise, or how is this program at this kind of at that point, since we started working together, affected the operations?
It's been huge for us. So I'm very fortunate to be at One where we value the feedback, we value the data that we're getting back. Nothing is ever turned away or dismissed. Um, it's always inquired upon further. So people will look at the results and there's never any attempt to dismiss it or invalidate it. It's always, that's interesting. I want to know more. Um, and so what that leads us to is we get more surveys on the board, right? All of a sudden, I think I started off with a vendor NPS survey, and then I did a carrier NPS survey. But in between, we launched some interaction surveys. Well, that next year immediately was our product team now needs an NPS survey. What is the product NPS score going to be? So we're starting to measure things all across the journey. So
Okay.
the impact to our overall partnership or our overall operations, it's valuable in the sense that we're able to make strategic decisions based off of the feedback. So, based off of how our vendors feel, based off of how our carriers feel, based off of how people calling into our call center feel, I've got I've got NPS measurements across all these different levels of relationships for all of our customers and all of our personas, which really helps us create that holistic view. And without that holistic view of what's going on with all the personas across the entire journey, we're not really able to create a good corporate strategy. What I'm really proud of is coming out of that first year, our first full kind of customer journey measurement, where we measured at multiple points from delivery to support to the annual survey campaigns. Immediately our executive team came out and said, we're going to create the year of the customer. And that's where we started to see the focus of everything One was doing become more customer centric. And it wasn't driven by some, vision that somebody had. It was data driven based off of the data that we were getting back from the survey program. And that is the number one impact that this entire experience has had working with both Qualtrics and with Red Pepper. And now it's just part of our culture. Like there's not a single team that isn't saying, well, what's the feedback? What are our clients saying? We're trying to get surveys across every touch point for all of our teams. And I'm trying to get that data to all of our teams too. So we can consume it more and starting to use the tools that we have available to us in different ways.
Yeah, absolutely. And really spreading out a CX program within an organization takes a lot of buy-in from executives, from other team members. What strategies have worked with you in securing buy-in for these new initiatives?
Well, I feel super fortunate at One that we had executive buy-in from the get-go. They had already conducted an NPS survey previous to me coming on board. So that was really great that there was some sort of baseline there. I wasn't introducing this new concept. What's also really great is stemming down from the executive level into an operational level and our senior leadership is we want the data. Like we almost crave the feedback. Like we really do want to know more and we want to take action based off of what we see. So just coming in right off the bat, having executive buy-in was huge. I actually haven't experienced that at previous companies, and it is difficult to overcome. But what really started to change is after we did the initial NPS surveys, that first year when I was implementing the program, it immediately became an organizational goal for the company. So it was immediately added to our OGSMs, which is like our big corporate goal structure. It was on there right away, increase NPS and customer satisfaction. And it's been on there every year since. And because it's at the corporate level, that stems down to, or it branches down to all of our other goals. So there's not a single department that doesn't have that as part of their goals for the year. And that just helps facilitate A, the culture of being data driven, B, valuing the experiential data, and then C, it's everybody's involved, everybody's responsible for it. Customer experience is everybody's responsibility at One Inc.
Yeah. More on buy-in. It's very common that organizations we work with, we get them up to speed in the platform, we help them get their feet wet and their programs started. But it takes still a lot of buy-in to get executives to continue partner relationships in a lot of aspects. How did you communicate the value of working with Red Pepper software to your internal stakeholders, and how has that value been received with executives?
Well, I mean, communicating the value was pretty easy as my role began to grow. The program started with just me. I worked with a few other people to kind of give me some guidance and some feedback here and there. But really, it was just me. And as my role started to grow, it made sense to continue with Red Pepper, especially with just the services retainer, because now I wasn't going to be a blocker. It wasn't going to be I'm working on different projects, or I'm not working on too many other programs. I'm trying to get those going and up and running, where I become a blocker for getting new surveys out because I knew that would be a killer to the buy-in. It would be totally invaluable if I had to turn away other teams and departments and say, sorry, I can't help you, or I can't get that analysis, or I can't get that survey out. So by continuing our partnership, it just enabled us to keep the program going and keep it flowing smoothly.
Yeah, you were just kind of speaking to it. I know you've called it satellite programs, but as it's evolved, really involving other departments and what is important to them, and kind of leveraging Qualtrics to have them run their own kind of internal mini programs in the CX journey. So tell us more about how you leverage your cross-functional relationships to expand the growth of your overall program.
Well, it's more than the cross-functional relationships. It's part of buy-in, that organizational level buy-in is I never want to start a new program and start imposing those data points or those goals on other teams and departments. It needs to be important to them. So starting with the ELT level, it becoming part of our corporate strategy, then you start to have departments look at it and say, how do we leverage this to help us meet this organizational goal, right? Like this is now a corporate goal for us. How do we leverage this program? Everyone immediately thinks, well, we got to talk to Stephanie. She's the one who's running it. But I don't want to ever be doing it to them. So I have them help me create the questions for their point in the journey. We run through it. They test everything. I want to always make sure too that I'm connecting them back to, well, what results do you want to get out of these questions that you're asking? But the really important part is I give them decision making. I give them options, but they make the decisions on how and when their surveys get sent. Is it through Salesforce? Is it through an anonymous link? Is it an automated process? What does that look like for them so they can leverage and utilize it the most? The other part of that is, building it up, making sure that it works for them, but also getting the data back to them. So they could go into Qualtrics. We have limited licenses. That's part of us running a lean program. But it's about also pulling that data out. And we did engage with Red Pepper for professional services to get our data out of Qualtrics into a hosted database that we manage. And we get that information into Power BI. And all of a sudden, it's consumable in an environment and a platform that they're already using for other goal tracking. So really it's getting that to them however they need it. There's some teams where I do just give them an export of the data. They just want the Excel file, they load it up into whatever they're using, wherever they're tracking their team's goals. So the satellite programs are successful in that way. Like I don't have to feel like I'm some sort of czar or I'm, exerting a lot of control over it. That's not what it's about. The more control I want to exert on this program, I think the less successful it would be. Rather, it's about being flexible, meeting departments and teams where they're at, and just enabling them to use the data. The one thing I do really kind of provide though is guidance and governance. So we don't really stray too far from the established KPIs that we set as our 7 core KPIs that we measure. People do have flexibility in other questions that they want to ask, but I'm always making sure that I can tie something back to what we're tracking all the way across the journey. So there's no completely isolated or rogue surveys out there. They all fit into the bigger picture.
Yeah, I love that. It's I'm sure everyone's heard the phrase of the you make it think it's their idea and they're all bought in. So
Yeah.
yeah. Moving on from that in the satellite programs, what other considerations do you keep in mind when aligning these satellite programs with your main strategy?
The biggest thing I consider is if they have someone on their team who can act as a liaison between me and that team, someone that I can talk to about what the results are and what I see. So basically, is they need a champion. It's more than just kind of partnering with them one time. Is we need somebody that we can work with ongoing as a champion for that team and that department. If I wanted to take that a step further, they would also need their executive as a part of it. And we do have a team that's been really successful with the satellite program. They have somebody working with us daily on an operational level. And then we also meet with that team monthly with their executive to review. And what's great about it is it puts us in a position where we're supporting them. These are their goals. It's their survey, it's their satellite program, but we're really in a position where we're supporting them. And that always feels good, right? I want to make sure our teams are successful. I'm not really after my success. It's about making them successful. And the more involved they are in that, the easier it is for everyone and everyone's happy at the end.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's move to the data strategy side of it. So how important is data in shaping your strategy with Red Pepper?
The data is huge. I was on this campaign for a while where I was like, we got to free the data, which was essentially get the data out of Qualtrics. I know they have new licensing models now where you can kind of have unlimited licenses, and we are looking to move towards that. But when we first started the program, we were really limited in the budget. Again, we were running super lean. So I needed a way to get the data out to where our team was already consuming everything, where everybody was consuming data, and that was Power BI. So the connector between Qualtrics and Power BI also required a license. So that wasn't really a really good option for us. And it made sense for us to start pulling that data out so we could join it against other operational data points, which is what we actually do in Power BI. So not only are we summarizing straight experiential data, but now we're able to compare it side by side with operational data. And we can start joining things based off of a common denominator, such as a case ID for a Salesforce case. When I have a case ID, now I can tie it to a phone call because I also have phone calls associated with case IDs. And that makes a huge difference for us. All of a sudden, now I have a Power BI report that my quality team uses, and we can look at negative VOC feedback that comes back in. I immediately have the link for the case, and then I can also provide the link for the phone call that's associated with it. So it makes the QA program better. We're able to target and zero in on specific feedback that we're getting, and that's just an example from our contact center. Our delivery team uses it in their own way. We've created custom reporting with them, and I know we've also created custom dashboards with them. So again, it's just about freeing the data, giving us lots of options, and now being able to tie it directly to other operational data points. There's nothing worse than having data kind of trapped in their own systems. It kind of becomes useless. And working with Red Pepper to do that, to get that data into its own, data warehouse where it's hosted. When we have issues with it, we can reach out to you guys, which is really great. I'm not tying up my team internally when they're focused on, our operations. I can leverage Red Pepper to help do all that stuff for me. And when we start to identify issues with the data, it's really great that I can go back to Red Pepper and say, hey, we're starting to see some of these issues, or all of a sudden these fields are missing. Help me find out what's going wrong and help me fill it back in. And that's been a really great experience so far.
Yeah, fantastic. What systems or tools have been pivotal in maintaining a strong data strategy?
For us, the Azure database definitely has been the biggest tool that's giving us the most flexibility. Not only can we go in and work with the data directly in the database, but now we can visualize it in Power BI. We can export it into Excel. Qualtrics itself is also a great tool, but it's always a little cumbersome to export data directly out of Qualtrics and then just kind of expect a end business user to know what to do with it. I don't expect them to know which columns are relevant to them and which columns are not relevant to them. Um, so Power BI has definitely been great because we can kind of shrink down the data set for them. The other one too is just Salesforce. Being able to connect into Salesforce, and we do offer some of that reporting in there. It's not where we govern any of our data. It's kind of just allowing us to send information back. That way, if somebody happens to be looking at a case or happens to be looking at an account, there's some limited information there. Again, it's just about meeting people where they're at with the data. It wouldn't be a good strategy at this point to say you have to look at this data in Qualtrics because that's where it all is. We do a really good job of saying this is what the dashboard is. Qualtrics is the source of truth. These are the other tools that we can use. And then we, periodically QA it against Qualtrics. So whenever there's a discrepancy in the data, I always say Qualtrics is the source of truth. Now we have to validate wherever you're looking at this information at.
What steps are you taking to continue to ensure your program continues to evolve and improve over time? After 3 years, what are the next steps to continue that improvement?
Well, we got a couple of things. We can still probably listen more along the journey. Right now, we've got the journey covered pretty well. I do have a journey map, and I've identified a few more places where we can still expand our surveys or consolidate some survey and feedback efforts. So that's definitely the top of mind. Second is how do I start leveraging AI against it? I know Qualtrics has some new AI functionality that's kind of coming out. I'm interested to learn more about that. How do I leverage my current AI tools that I have at One Inc? It's now really more about all the feedback that comes in. I mean, we've got one survey that has over 13,000 responses for the last 2.5, 3 years. It's impossible for me to go in at this point and to try to digest that in any way. So I need to use AI features. We do have a tool internally that we use, and it's great because I can just take an export of all of the open feedback we get, and I can tell it to give me the summary of the top 10 issues and provide me, ideas for resolution. And I use that probably once to twice a month now. It's really great, but those are what I'm looking to do to really just expand our program is how do I get feedback faster? How do I kind of digest the information faster? How do I get it to tell me what the issue is and where I need to look rather than me spending time doing the analysis and trying to figure out how I'm going to guide our executive team or how I'm going to guide our corporate strategy based off of the feedback. Um, that level of analysis, it just takes a lot of effort and it's a lot of ramp up time for a person to know the nuances of experiential data against operational data. So whatever I can leverage to keep my team running lean is really what I'm going to focus on to continue the growth of the program and just to make it more relevant too. I know AI is kind of like the hot term right now, and it's what's trending and it's what's sensational out like in tech in general. But if we don't start crafting good strategies to leverage it, I don't think anything else is going to grow along with it because AI is moving at a totally different speed than everything else. Um, and that's what I'm focused on to keep our program moving along.
It's a lot of organizations' goals to have a mature program. how are you measuring the program's maturity and the progress of maturity over time?
So I don't have specific metrics right now that I measure our maturity against. Really, for the past 2 years, it's been about just getting the program up, running, getting survey points across our journey. I'm about 75 to 80% there. I really only have two more points in our journey where I could start measuring and bringing that data into Qualtrics. And this is also where Red Pepper comes in because I started some conversations with your guys' research team to see how I can start forming some of those metrics. And it's really surrounding value chain. And I've actually started working with Qualtrics as well to see how do I start showing the value of this program against the rest of our goals and everything else that we do at One Inc. And that's kind of a natural evolution point is, first we got to just get things up. We got to get them running. We got to get some baselines. Then we got to show some improvement over time, which we have done actually. I have been tracking now. I got 3 years worth of data so I can see some trends starting to form and we are trending in the right direction. But now it's how do I continue to show this value of what this program is offering? What's promising is our feedback scores are going up, they're not trending down. So I feel like that's going to be a great jump start to show some of that value. And, honestly, I haven't really gotten to this point in the journey of creating a program before. So it's really exciting for me. I'm learning something new, and it's great to be able to get this far into a program. And I know not a lot of companies make it here. I've worked at a company before where the program didn't really go anywhere because I was lacking the buy in or I was lacking the ability to get surveys up and running. I was lacking the ability to, get a champion for each department. But I've been super fortunate at One Inc. where all those things are coming into place. And now I get to see this program come to full maturity. I don't have an exact measurement. I know I'm not there, but I know even once I get to maturity, it's going to be how do I keep it relevant? How do I keep us staying up on trends? How do I make sure that we're still doing what we need to do to make a difference? If I ever start reporting out the same NPS, number year after year, I know I've got to go back to the drawing board to kind of refresh the program. But I'm not quite there yet, but I'm excited to keep it going.
Yeah, it's always the more you learn that you don't know anything. um, and so, what advice would you give to others in your position on how they can move their program to the next level?
I really think you have to have a strong foundation. So you have to have your entire executive team on board. Having just one or two champions on the executive team isn't enough. It has to be something that the whole team wants. You have to get buy-in from the groups that you're working with. You don't want to just be doing this to them. You want to include them and make them feel good about it too. Make them know the difference that they can start making with their own teams to get some better results. And the other one is pick some core metrics. We've got 7 core metrics that we measure. Some of them we measure at every single point in the journey, satisfaction and ease of business. We measure NPS at the majority of the points in our journey, but we stick to some core metrics that I can trend across all points at all times. The other thing is too is stay confident in what you're measuring. I have no intentions of changing the strategy of what I'm asking on our surveys right now. Like I really believe in them and they're pointing me in the right directions. I'm not worried about staying on top of what's sensationalized or what the current hot trend is. Even AI, I can admit I was a little slow to come onto it because I was really very wary of technology that was already existing being rebranded as AI. And I'm starting to see that's kind of dissipating now. But you just have to be confident in what you're asking. And, a good example is going to be ease of business. That's what I label it at our company. And it's always framed as essentially how easy is it to do business with us? I see that kind of being rebranded now as a customer effort score. And I just remind everybody that I work with, hey, I understand that the current acronym that's kind of out there is Customer Effort Score, CES. I go, but it's ease of business. At the end of the day, that's the foundation of what this question is. So don't be thrown off by the acronym of EOB rather than CES. That's really the core of it. Is you have to really know and understand what you're asking and what impact you're looking to get out of it. If you're not confident in that, you're going to be changing your questions on your surveys and you're not going to be able to trend them over time. And I really feel that's what starts to devalue a survey
Yeah,
and a whole program.
certainly. As you've mentioned before, AI has become the hot topic of experience management and the tools. It seems every day there's more AI tools that are coming out to help analyze data. Qualtrics is releasing a whole bunch with more plans in the future. How do you feel about these trends? I know you kind of spoke a little bit to it, but how do you feel about these trends in the industry surrounding AI and the way the metrics are and will evolve?
I think we're at the perfect time to start using AI. I really feel it's if I have to go out digging for answers rather than just being in a position where I can connect dots, then there's no value to the AI. I mentioned there are one survey that has over 13,000 responses. That's an interaction level survey. And that is essentially our customer's customer reaching out to our contact center for support. And yes, they're a little removed from us, but they're still a huge persona for us, right? In our contact center, they account for 60 to 70% of all of the contacts we have. And I need to be able to slice and dice that data. And it changes. That's where we see the most impact of what's trending and what's not trending as far as issues go. Why are people calling us? When we start to use tools like I don't have to go and look at these responses one by one. I don't need to try and group them by case categories or any other data that's connected to it. I can simply just drop it into our AI tool and say, review all of these notes from the past 2.5 years and let me know what the top issues are. Let me know what the top things that are going well are. Give me some good news to report out. We tend to want to look at issues to resolve them, but it's also a great opportunity for me to say, hey, what is the good feedback that's coming in? Give me 5 good, give me 5 bad. And then give me 5 recommendations to fix the bad. The tool does that in minutes. And previously it would have been, team, I need 2 weeks, maybe even 3 weeks. We'll probably have to have a couple of meetings because we're going to have some follow up questions based off of what we start to discover. But all that gets cut down on, and it just makes the program that much more relevant. Where at the pace that we're moving at One Inc, it's kind of like a time warp. We're moving really fast. So if I'm not able to deliver that kind of feedback quickly, it becomes irrelevant really fast. People are going to move on to the next topic. If I have to constantly tell them that they have to wait a couple weeks for the analytics. And that's really where AI is coming in to resolve some of it. And I am really looking forward to see what tools Qualtrics comes out with, and how we can further leverage those.
So speaking to kind of how to interpret the results, what about the individual metrics? Do you think AI is going to affect any long-standing metrics that have always been a standard, NPS, CES, CSAT, anything like that?
No, I feel very strongly that these metrics are here to stay. I'm always wary of when people try to kind of switch up what we should or shouldn't be measuring. It's still essential that you have strong metrics that you can fall back on. It's never good if you're at a conference and people are, whispering negative comments about your organization. You've got the big shiny booth, you're there, but what if people in the background or go back and go have drinks later and they talk about that your product actually isn't that great? Customer references are still very relevant, especially when we're selecting new software for companies. I mean, I do that. I constantly reference previous systems that I've used. I constantly reference, previous people that I've worked with who maybe have more current experience with certain systems and technology. So something like NPS isn't going anywhere. It's a very strong metric. What I do support though is leveraging some of these new flashy tools to kind of give us the peripheral vision, supporting KPIs. Even something as simple as satisfaction and ease of business, they're still very, very relevant because if they start to not match or not align, you can start to have issues and fractures in your processes and how your customers are feeling and your customer churn rate. And those are very real things that happen to companies. If your satisfaction is high, I love this company. I love when I do get a result, but it's very difficult to get a result. It's very difficult to work with you. That's just as likely to cause churn as a negative, NPS overall. And those are the things that are going to impact your NPS. That's what's going to say, hey, Preston, I was looking to work with that company. And I do love their product. I do love the results that we get out of it, but they're very, very difficult to work with. And I can never get my results on time. So I had to switch to go to a different company. Might be a little less feature rich, but it's a lot more reliable. Like those are very real conversations that happen all the time. And I know I have them in passing about previous systems that I've worked with. And it's I would just I would hate any company to be in a position where they drop some of these measurements because of where they think AI is going to take them or where they think is going to be the most sensationalized or what's the most trendy for the industry in general. I think it's critical that we kind of stay on path with these metrics that are tried and true before we kind of start writing them off.
Yeah. Thinking about the future and all that's to come, what are you most excited about? Looking forward to help mature your program. What are you most excited about?
I got three top things that I'm most excited about. One is leveraging AI more. I'm very excited to hopefully get to X4 at Qualtrics this year just to learn more about their AI, how we can use it, some real time use cases. Also, just the value chain initiative, bringing my program into full maturity, being able to show the value that it's bringing, how we've helped influence and change the organization and our goals. And then the other one is that full journey listening. So I mentioned a few times that while we do measure all along the journey, it's not complete, it's not end to end. And that would be a big milestone for me personally in starting this program, right? Like we're not just running a single one-time annual NPS campaign. We're listening and asking for feedback at every interaction we have. And our contact center has upwards of 30,000 interactions a month. So it's a huge place for us to keep a nice pulse. But also in our delivery program at that point in the journey too, we measure there and we get different feedback that's still very relevant and just being able to kind of paint that big picture. I think we're there as a company to start really giving that holistic view and changing the way that we keep on top of it. So, like, we're ready, we have enough data coming in where we can start pumping up monthly results and start trending it monthly at the executive level. That's really what I'm excited about. Right now, it's kind of quarterly updates. I tried doing monthly updates a few times. I just didn't have enough data coming in to give relevant updates. So that's where I'm excited. I want it to be more of a pulse. I want it to be something that we're all thinking about all the time. And I'm excited to use all the new tools that are coming out to be able to do that.